The silence of Steve's peaceful world shattered like glass as something impossible streaked across the pixelated sky. A green meteor blazed overhead, trailing emerald fire through the familiar cubic atmosphere where no meteor should exist. The object crashed into the distant mountains with such tremendous force that the very blocks themselves trembled beneath Steve's feet. Trees swayed impossibly in the aftermath. Animals fled in terror. Even the normally placid villagers emerged from their homes, pointing wooden fingers toward the smoking crater that now scarred their perfect landscape. Steve gripped his diamond pickaxe tighter, watching smoke rise from what had once been Mount Chunky, now reduced to scattered cobblestone and debris. In all his years of mining, crafting, and surviving in this world of infinite possibilities, he had never witnessed anything quite like this. The impact had left a gaping wound in the earth itself, exposing layers of stone and ore that glowed with an otherworldly light. What manner of entity could survive such a catastrophic entry into their realm? Steve had faced creepers, endermen, and even the dreaded ender dragon, but this felt different. This carried the weight of something from beyond their cubic reality, something that didn't belong in a world governed by the simple laws of block placement and resource gathering. The answer to that question lay buried beneath tons of shattered stone, slowly stirring to consciousness in the darkness of the crater. Dr. Bruce Banner's eyes opened to a world that made no sense whatsoever. Everything around him appeared to be constructed from perfect cubes. The rocks weren't rocks, but geometric blocks that seemed to defy every law of physics he understood. The soil beneath him consisted of brown squares arranged in perfect mathematical precision. Banner pushed himself upright, his brilliant scientific mind struggling to process what he was experiencing. The gamma radiation that had transformed him into the Hulk had somehow torn open a dimensional barrier during his latest rampage. He remembered falling through what could only be described as a cosmic wound in reality itself. Now, he found himself in a place that challenged every principle of structural engineering, geology, and basic physics. The trees here grew in impossible formations. Perfect wooden blocks stacked vertically with leafy cube clusters floating impossibly at their tops. No branches, no natural growth patterns, just geometric precision that hurt his educated mind to contemplate. Even the sunlight fell in strange angular patterns, creating shadows that formed perfect squares rather than the organic shapes he knew from Earth. Banner attempted to stand, his legs shaky from the dimensional transition. The very ground beneath his feet felt wrong, as if each step landed on invisible grid lines that his consciousness could somehow perceive. Every surface seemed to snap to some underlying mathematical framework that governed this reality. He reached out to touch one of the cubic stones, expecting his hand to pass through what must surely be some form of hallucination brought on by gamma exposure. Instead, his fingers encountered solid matter, real substance that responded to pressure with the unmistakable feedback of genuine physical interaction. This wasn't a dream or radiation-induced vision. This was actual reality, governed by rules so alien to his scientific understanding that his rational mind began to fracture under the strain of accepting what his senses reported. Meanwhile, Steve descended into the crater with the careful precision of an experienced miner. His torches cast flickering light across the devastation, revealing the impossible sight of a human figure among the wreckage. Not a villager, not a zombie, not any mob he had encountered in countless hours of exploration. This being possessed anatomical complexity that existed somewhere between the simple geometry of his world and something far more intricate. The stranger's clothing appeared damaged from whatever journey had brought him here. His skin showed none of the characteristic pixelated texture that defined everything in Steve's reality. Instead, it displayed a disturbing smoothness that suggested origins from somewhere beyond the familiar cubic boundaries of existence. Steve approached cautiously, diamond sword at the ready. Experience had taught him that unknown entities in this world typically fell into two categories: They were either neutral, like the wandering traders who occasionally appeared with exotic goods, or hostile, like the numerous monsters that emerged from darkness to threaten peaceful settlements. This being's nature remained unclear, but the sheer destructive force of its arrival suggested considerable power. Banner became aware of the approaching figure and turned to face what appeared to be a humanoid, constructed entirely from geometric shapes. The being's head was a perfect cube, its body composed of rectangular blocks arranged in a roughly human configuration. It moved with mechanical precision, each step seeming to snap to invisible grid coordinates. Most unsettling of all, it carried a weapon that gleamed with an inner light, suggesting materials and crafting techniques beyond Banner's comprehension. The two beings regarded each other across the crater floor, each struggling to process the impossibility of the other's existence. Steve saw complexity where only simplicity should exist. Banner saw geometric perfection where organic chaos should reign. Neither possessed the conceptual framework necessary to fully understand what they were witnessing. Steve cleared his throat, producing a sound that emerged as the characteristic grunt his kind used for communication. He gestured toward the destruction surrounding them, then pointed questioningly at Banner, attempting to determine whether this stranger posed a threat to his world's carefully maintained balance. Banner recognized the gesture as an attempt at communication despite its primitive nature. He raised his hands in what he hoped would be interpreted as a peaceful gesture, though he couldn't be certain how such signals might translate in a reality where social interaction apparently occurred through simplified audiovisual cues. The effort to remain calm while processing the overwhelming strangeness of his situation began to strain Banner's carefully maintained emotional control. The scientist in him desperately wanted to understand the physical laws governing this impossible place. The traumatized human in him simply wanted to return to familiar surroundings where trees grew naturally and rocks formed irregular shapes. The gamma-irradiated monster lurking beneath his consciousness stirred restlessly, feeding on his growing frustration and confusion. Steve noticed subtle changes in the stranger's posture and coloration. The being's skin seemed to be shifting toward a greenish hue, and its breathing had become more labored. Years of surviving in a world filled with dangerous transformations had taught Steve to recognize the warning signs of impending threat. He tightened his grip on his diamond sword and took a defensive stance. Banner felt the familiar sensation building within his chest. The anger, the frustration, the overwhelming need to smash everything that didn't make sense. This geometric prison of impossibility was triggering every psychological defense mechanism that had led to his transformation in the first place. The harder he tried to rationalize what he was experiencing, the more his rational mind rebelled against accepting it. The blocks around them began to vibrate slightly, as if responding to some invisible force. Steve had never witnessed anything quite like this phenomenon. In his world, environmental changes typically occurred through direct player interaction or specific game mechanics. This spontaneous alteration of the physical environment suggested capabilities that transcended normal operational parameters. Banner's heart rate accelerated as the transformation began. He tried to warn the cubic being standing before him, tried to communicate the danger that was about to manifest. But his voice emerged as nothing more than an increasingly aggressive growl. The geometric perfection of this reality was driving him toward the edge of control, and once he crossed that threshold, nothing in this orderly world would remain unchanged. The very foundations of Steve's reality were about to encounter a force that recognized no rules, respected no boundaries, and possessed the power to reshape entire landscapes through pure, unrestrained fury. The quiet world of mining, crafting, and careful construction was about to meet the unbridled chaos of the Incredible Hulk. The transformation began with subtle shifts that Steve's experienced eye immediately recognized as dangerous. The stranger's breathing grew heavier, more labored, while his skin deepened from pale flesh tones to an increasingly vivid shade of green. Muscles began expanding beneath torn clothing, straining against fabric that had somehow survived dimensional transit, but now faced a far more immediate threat of destruction. Steve had witnessed many transformations in his world. Villagers struck by lightning became witches. Pigs struck by the same force became zombie pigmen. Peaceful animals could turn hostile under specific circumstances. But this change carried a weight of barely contained violence that made his diamond armor feel inadequate despite its legendary protective properties. Banner fought against the rising tide of gamma-fueled rage with every technique he had mastered over years of managing his condition. Breathing exercises that had once helped him maintain control in Earth's familiar environments proved useless against the cognitive dissonance of existing in a reality constructed from perfect geometric shapes. Meditation practices designed for organic surroundings offered no peace when every surface around him followed mathematical principles that hurt his scientific mind to contemplate. The cubic world itself seemed to sense the approaching chaos stone blocks. Nearby began developing hairline fractures that spread across their perfectly smooth surfaces, like spider webs of impending destruction. Dirt blocks shifted slightly in their positions, as if the very grid system that maintained reality's structural integrity was preparing for unprecedented stress. Steve backed away slowly, his mining instincts warning him that whatever was happening here exceeded the normal parameters of environmental hazards he had learned to navigate. This wasn't a creeper about to explode or a skeleton preparing to fire arrows. This was something fundamentally different, something that threatened not just his health, but the basic operational framework of existence itself. The stranger's body continued expanding at an alarming rate. His torn shirt finally gave way completely, revealing musculature that defied every anatomical principle Steve understood. The being's face contorted with effort as he struggled against some internal force that demanded release. When he spoke, his voice had deepened to an almost unrecognizable growl that reverberated through the crater like distant thunder. Banner managed one final coherent thought before consciousness surrendered to primal fury. He wondered whether this geometric reality would prove capable of containing the Hulk's boundless rage, or whether his transformation would shatter the mathematical foundations that held this world together. The question answered itself moments later when his expanding form reached the critical threshold where Banner's control finally snapped completely. The roar that erupted from the Hulk's throat as he completed his transformation shook every block within a 100-meter radius. Birds fled from their perfectly cubic nests in geometric trees. Sheep huddled together in terrified woolly squares. Even the sun seemed to flicker momentarily, as if the very light sources that illuminated this reality had been briefly overwhelmed by the raw emotional force of uncontrolled gamma radiation, meeting orderly existence. Steve stumbled backward as the ground beneath his feet cracked and shifted. The Hulk rose to his full height, towering above the human-sized proportions that define normal entities in this world. His massive green form cast shadows that fell across the landscape in impossible patterns, creating areas of darkness that didn't conform to the predictable light mechanics Steve had always relied upon. The Hulk's eyes swept across his surroundings, processing the geometric environment through a consciousness driven by pure emotion rather than rational thought. Everything here represented order, structure, careful planning, and deliberate construction. Every block placed with precision, every surface aligned to invisible coordinates, every element of the landscape designed to serve specific functional purposes within a greater systematic framework. Such perfection enraged him beyond measure. The Hulk had always been a force of chaos, a manifestation of everything wild and uncontrollable in the human psyche. This world of perfect cubes and mathematical precision represented everything he instinctively sought to destroy. Order was constraint. Structure was imprisonment. The very existence of such rigid geometric boundaries triggered every aspect of his psychological programming that demanded freedom through destruction. Steve watched in horrified fascination as the green giant reached toward one of the crater's walls. The being's fingers closed around a stone block with casual ease, lifting what should have been an immovable object as if it weighed nothing at all. The block came away from its position with a soft popping sound that Steve had heard countless times while mining, but never accompanied by such effortless force. The Hulk examined the cubic stone with the confused curiosity of a child encountering an unfamiliar toy. He turned it over in his massive hands, noting how its surfaces met at perfect right angles, how its edges maintained absolute straightness, how its weight distributed evenly despite its artificial geometric constraints. Then, with a growl of frustration, he crushed it between his palms. The stone block didn't crumble naturally as rocks should when subjected to extreme pressure. Instead, it simply ceased to exist, dissolving into the inventory space that governed resource management in this reality. The Hulk stared at his empty hands in confusion, unable to comprehend where the solid matter had gone. In his world, destroyed objects left debris, fragments, evidence of their former existence. Here, they simply vanished according to rules that made no sense to his rage-driven consciousness. This inexplicable disappearance only intensified his anger. The Hulk began tearing into the crater wall with systematic fury, ripping out block after block in rapid succession. Each stone that dissolved upon destruction frustrated him further, creating a feedback loop of escalating violence that threatened to consume everything within reach. Steve realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in his world's history. No entity he had ever encountered possessed the capability to remove blocks with such casual force while displaying complete ignorance of the inventory system that should have been collecting the destroyed materials. This being operated according to principles that existed outside the fundamental mechanics governing reality itself. The Hulk's rampage expanded beyond the crater as his frustration grew. He leaped with incredible force, easily clearing the excavated depression to land among the geometric trees that dotted the landscape. His massive fists swung at the wooden blocks with devastating effect, each impact sending entire tree structures collapsing into component parts that scattered across the ground before vanishing into whatever dimensional space claimed destroyed resources. Animals fled in all directions as the green giant carved a path of destruction through their carefully balanced ecosystem. Cows, sheep, pigs, and chickens ran with the mechanical precision their species exhibited, but their predictable movement patterns proved inadequate against a threat that moved with such overwhelming speed and power. Steve followed at a safe distance, his mind racing through possible solutions to this unprecedented crisis. His world had always operated according to clear rules. Monsters spawned under specific conditions. Environmental hazards followed predictable patterns. Even the most dangerous encounters could be managed through proper preparation and understanding of game mechanics. But this entity seemed immune to the laws that governed everything else. It destroyed blocks without collecting them. It moved with fluid organic motion rather than the characteristic stepping patterns that define normal locomotion. Most disturbing of all, it appeared to be growing stronger rather than weaker as it continued its rampage, feeding off its own destructive actions in ways that violated every principle of energy conservation Steve understood. The Hulk's path of destruction led him towards Steve's carefully constructed home base, a sprawling complex of interconnected buildings that represented months of careful planning and resource gathering. Workshops, storage facilities, farms, and living quarters all arranged according to optimal efficiency principles that maximized functionality while maintaining aesthetic appeal. Steve's heart sank as he realized the green giant was heading directly toward everything he had built. Everything he had worked to create in this world of infinite possibilities. The creature's rage showed no signs of diminishing, and its destructive capabilities seemed limited only by the speed at which it could move from target to target. The inevitable collision between unstoppable force and carefully constructed civilization was about to begin, and Steve found himself completely unprepared for a threat that operated outside every survival strategy he had ever developed. The peaceful agricultural district that Steve had spent countless hours perfecting lay directly in the Hulk's destructive path. Wheat fields arranged in precise geometric patterns stretched across the landscape, their golden blocks swaying gently in the algorithmic breeze. Pumpkin patches displayed perfect orange cubes in mathematically optimal spacing. Carrot crops emerged from brown soil blocks in orderly rows that demonstrated months of careful agricultural planning. The Hulk's massive feet thundered across this cultivated paradise, each footstep obliterating entire crop sections with casual indifference. Wheat blocks exploded into seeds and items that briefly flickered in the air, before vanishing into the mysterious inventory space that governed resource collection. Pumpkins burst under his weight, their contents dissolving according to mechanics he couldn't comprehend or care about understanding. Steve watched helplessly as his automated farming systems crumbled beneath the green giant's rampage. Redstone circuits that had taken days to design and implement sparked and failed as their supporting blocks were torn away. Water irrigation channels redirected chaotically when their containing barriers disappeared under crushing force. Even the peaceful animals he had bred and cared for scattered in geometric terror as their orderly world collapsed around them. The Hulk paused momentarily beside Steve's prized chicken coop, confused by the small white creatures that moved in predictable square patterns around their wooden enclosure. He reached down with one massive finger to poke at a chicken, and the gentle contact sent the bird flying across the landscape with physics-defying momentum. The creature landed safely due to fall damage calculations, but its distressed clucking echoed across the destruction like a lament for lost innocence. This brief interaction with livestock seemed to trigger something deeper in the Hulk's consciousness. Animals represented life, growth, nurturing care invested by intelligent beings in creating sustainable systems. The realization that he was destroying not just structures, but entire ecosystems built through patient dedication caused his rage to shift from pure destruction towards something more focused and dangerous. Steve's main storage facility loomed ahead, a massive cubic warehouse containing the accumulated resources of countless mining expeditions. Chests filled with precious diamonds, emeralds, gold, and iron represented thousands of hours spent deep underground, facing monsters and navigating treacherous cave systems. Enchanted weapons and armor hung on item frames, each piece carefully crafted and enhanced through experience points earned in dangerous combat. The Hulk approached this repository of organized wealth with growing fury. Every chest represented constraint, categorization, the imposition of order upon chaos. Resources sorted by type, arranged by utility, stored according to logical systems that maximized efficiency while maintaining easy access. Such methodical organization embodied everything his chaotic nature instinctively rejected. His fist crashed through the warehouse wall like it was constructed from paper rather than reinforced stone blocks. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire structure, causing support beams to crack and roofing materials to shift ominously. Inside, rows upon rows of storage containers awaited his destructive attention, their contents representing the cumulative achievements of Steve's entire existence in this geometric realm. Steve rushed forward despite the obvious danger, unable to bear watching his life's work face annihilation. He had faced death countless times while gathering these resources, descending into lava-filled caverns, battling skeletal archers in dark corridors, surviving creeper explosions that had nearly ended his adventures permanently. Every diamond in those chests carried memories of triumph over adversity. The brave miner raised his enchanted diamond sword, its blade gleaming with supernatural sharpness that had cleaved through the toughest materials his world could produce. He had wielded this weapon against the Ender Dragon itself, striking decisive blows that had freed his realm from that creature's tyrannical influence. Surely such a legendary blade could at least get the green giant's attention. Steve swung with all his strength, aiming for what appeared to be the creature's most vulnerable point. The enchanted diamond connected with the Hulk's massive leg, delivering a strike that should have carved through any material known to exist in this reality. Instead, the blade bounced harmlessly off green skin that proved harder than obsidian, tougher than bedrock, more resilient than any substance Steve had ever encountered. The Hulk looked down at the tiny geometric figure attacking his ankle with what might have been amusement if his consciousness were capable of such complex emotions. This small, cube-headed being possessed courage that impressed even his rage-driven mind, but its weapons were laughably inadequate against gamma-enhanced physiology that had withstood artillery bombardments and nuclear explosions. With casual dismissiveness, the Hulk flicked his finger against Steve's cubic torso. The gentle tap sent the miner flying backward with tremendous force, his geometric body tumbling through the air like a launched projectile. Steve crashed through his own wheat field, bounced across a stone platform, and finally came to rest against a tree trunk with enough impact to shake loose several wooden blocks. Pain flooded through Steve's nervous system as his health bar decreased dramatically from the single casual contact. His diamond armor had absorbed most of the damage, but the remaining force still left him stunned and struggling to regain his footing. In all his adventures, he had never encountered anything capable of inflicting such devastating injury through such minimal effort. The Hulk turned his attention back to the storage facility, tearing into the building with systematic thoroughness that suggested intelligence beneath his bestial fury. Each chest he destroyed released its contents in brilliant cascades of items that scattered across the ground before disappearing into the mysterious void that claimed all loose resources. Diamonds, emeralds, gold ingots, rare materials gathered from the deepest cave systems, all vanishing without trace as their containers were obliterated. Steve struggled to his feet, watching helplessly as decades of careful resource management dissolved into nothingness. The Hulk's destruction wasn't random or chaotic despite his emotional state. He was methodically dismantling every organized system, every carefully planned structure, every example of imposed order that Steve had created in his geometric paradise. The enchanted weapons and armor disappeared next, their magical properties offering no protection against destruction that operated outside normal physical parameters. Swords that had slain dragons crumbled into component materials. Armor that had withstood the worst hazards this world could produce offered no resistance to the Hulk's overwhelming strength. Years of experience, point investment, and careful enchantment selection evaporated in moments. Moving beyond the storage facility, the Hulk encountered Steve's automated redstone machinery, complex circuits that performed useful functions through carefully calculated electrical logic. Automatic farms, sorting systems, transportation networks, all powered by redstone dust arranged in intricate patterns that had taken enormous patience and planning to design correctly. The sight of these mechanical systems triggered something primal in the Hulk's consciousness. Machines represented control, automation, the replacement of natural processes with artificial constructs designed to serve human convenience. His fists crashed down on delicate circuitry with savage satisfaction, sending sparks flying as redstone components shattered under his assault. Steve had designed these systems to operate independently, reducing the manual labor required to maintain his civilization. Crops would harvest themselves. Items would sort automatically. Resources would transport through underground networks without requiring constant supervision. The destruction of these mechanical marvels represented not just material loss, but the elimination of technological progress itself. The Hulk's rampage expanded to encompass Steve's architectural achievements, the decorative buildings that served no practical purpose beyond aesthetic satisfaction, fountains with flowing water features, gardens arranged in pleasing patterns, statues carved from rare materials, all fell victim to his systematic campaign against imposed order. Beauty itself became a target when it represented conscious design imposed upon chaotic possibility. Steve's carefully planned village came next, complete with roads, houses, shops, and gathering places designed to support a thriving community of geometric inhabitants. The Hulk tore through residential districts like a natural disaster, reducing homes to rubble and scattering their contents across the landscape. Beds, crafting tables, furnaces, all the domestic tools that enabled civilized existence, vanished beneath his overwhelming assault. The villagers themselves fled in characteristic geometric panic, their simple artificial intelligence driving them to seek shelter in buildings that offered no protection against this unprecedented threat. Their distressed sounds echoed across the destruction, wordless communications that conveyed universal fear regardless of the linguistic barriers between organic and digital consciousness. Watching his community face annihilation, Steve felt something he had never experienced in countless hours of gameplay: true helplessness. Every challenge he had previously faced could be overcome through proper preparation, strategic thinking, or superior equipment. But this green giant operated according to rules that made conventional solutions irrelevant. The creature's strength exceeded any parameters his world was designed to handle. Its durability surpassed the toughest materials available for crafting defensive equipment. Its destructive capabilities threatened not just individual structures, but the fundamental concept of construction itself. Most disturbing of all, it seemed to grow stronger rather than weaker as it continued its rampage, feeding off the chaos it created. Steve realized he was witnessing the collision between two incompatible realities. His world of careful construction and resource management faced a force of pure destruction that recognized no limits, respected no boundaries, acknowledged no authority beyond its own overwhelming power. The mathematical precision that governed everything he understood was meeting something that existed beyond calculation, beyond prediction, beyond control. The Hulk's roar shook the very foundations of reality as he destroyed the last remnants of Steve's agricultural district. Standing amid the devastation, surrounded by scattered blocks and vanishing items, the green giant surveyed his work with savage satisfaction. Everything that had represented order, planning, civilization itself lay in ruins around his massive feet. Yet his rage remained unsatisfied. Destruction alone wasn't enough to quiet the fury that drove his actions. This geometric world continued to exist around him, its fundamental laws unchanged, despite the surface devastation he had wrought. The sun still shone with algorithmic precision. The remaining landscape still followed mathematical principles that hurt his chaotic nature to contemplate. The Hulk turned his attention toward the horizon, where untouched wilderness promised new targets for his destructive impulses. Mountains waited to be leveled. Forests demanded to be cleared. Entire biomes called out for transformation from organized ecosystems into scattered debris. His rampage had only begun, and Steve's carefully constructed civilization had merely served as an appetizer for the feast of destruction that lay ahead. Steve crawled through the wreckage of what had once been his greatest architectural achievement, desperately searching for any surviving equipment that might help him comprehend this catastrophe. His hands trembled as he retrieved a battered crafting table from beneath a pile of shattered stone blocks. The familiar wooden surface bore deep scratches from the Hulk's rampage, but its fundamental functionality remained intact. The cubic miner's mind raced through every possible solution his world's mechanics might provide. Potions of strength could enhance his physical capabilities, but even the most powerful brewing recipes would prove inadequate against someone who had casually deflected an enchanted diamond blade. Splash potions of harming might inflict damage, but the green giant had demonstrated immunity to conventional weapon effects that suggested magical attacks would prove equally useless. Perhaps redstone contraptions could serve where direct confrontation had failed. Steve had witnessed the creature's particular fury when encountering mechanical systems, but that same rage might be exploited as a weakness. Trap mechanisms designed with sufficient complexity could theoretically contain or redirect such overwhelming force, though the engineering challenges involved exceeded anything he had previously attempted. The Hulk continued his systematic demolition of the surrounding landscape, each thunderous impact sending tremors through the ground that Steve felt in his geometric bones. Ancient oak trees that had stood since world generation collapsed under casual swipes of massive green fists, their wooden blocks scattered like confetti before dissolving into the inventory void that claimed all destroyed materials. Stone formations that had required millions of algorithmic years to achieve their current configurations crumbled instantly when the gamma-enhanced giant decided their existence offended his chaotic sensibilities. Entire cliff faces disappeared as he carved new paths through terrain that had never experienced such rapid geological transformation. Steve observed these displays of raw power with growing scientific curiosity despite his terror. This entity operated according to physical laws that seemed to supersede the fundamental mechanics governing everything else in his reality. The creature could interact with blocks and materials, but wasn't bound by the same limitations that constrained every other form of existence Steve had encountered. When the Hulk destroyed objects, they didn't always vanish into inventory space as they should, according to established resource management protocols. Sometimes fragments lingered momentarily in impossible positions before slowly fading from existence. Other times, entire structures would collapse in ways that violated the predictable physics Steve relied upon for construction planning. Most intriguingly, the Green Giant seemed capable of creating new terrain features through pure destructive force. His footsteps left impressions in the ground that remained as permanent alterations to the landscape, rather than temporary disturbances that would reset according to normal environmental mechanics. This suggested the ability to impose lasting changes upon reality itself. The implications were staggering for someone who had spent countless hours mastering the precise rules that governed block placement, resource gathering, and structural engineering. If this creature could permanently modify the fundamental framework of existence, then every assumption Steve had made about the nature of his world required complete reconsideration. A distant explosion drew Steve's attention toward the horizon, where the Hulk had apparently discovered his automated mining operation. The carefully designed shaft that descended hundreds of blocks into the earth had taken months to excavate safely, with proper lighting, ventilation, and transportation systems to maximize efficiency while minimizing danger from hostile creatures that spawned in darkness. The Green Giant's approach to mining proved characteristically direct and devastating. Rather than following established tunnels or using appropriate tools for different material types, he simply punched straight down through whatever layers stood between him and his desired depth. Bedrock itself, the supposedly indestructible foundation of all existence, cracked and splintered under his assault. Steve had always understood bedrock as an absolute barrier, the unbreakable boundary that defined the limits of possible excavation. Even creative mode capabilities respected this fundamental constraint, treating the gray-speckled blocks as immutable elements of world architecture. Witnessing their destruction challenged every assumption he held about the permanent versus temporary aspects of his reality. The sounds of subterranean devastation echoed through the landscape as the Hulk carved new cavern systems with his bare hands. Ancient underground structures that had existed since world generation collapsed as their supporting geology was casually removed. Lava flows redirected through newly created channels, creating dangerous new hazards in previously safe areas. Steve realized that his carefully mapped cave systems, memorized over years of exploration and resource gathering, were becoming obsolete in real time. The underground geography he had relied upon for navigation and planning was being rewritten by someone who possessed no understanding of the delicate balance required to maintain structural integrity in subterranean environments. Emergency evacuation became the only rational response to this escalating catastrophe. Steve remaining possessions, Priorit began gathering his few wising items that couldn't be easily replaced through conventional crafting recipes. His collection of rare enchanted books represented knowledge that would require extensive experience point investment to recreate. Ancient artifacts discovered in dungeon exploration carried historical significance beyond their material value. The process of selective salvage proved emotionally devastating as Steve was forced to abandon countless items that held personal significance but lacked practical utility for survival in an uncertain future. Decorative blocks gathered from distant biomes, trophies from memorable adventures, gifts received from friendly villagers during trading expeditions, all had to be left behind in favor of essential tools and resources. His loyal wolf companions approached cautiously, their simple artificial intelligence recognizing the distress in their owner's behavior patterns. These geometric pets had shared countless adventures, providing companionship during long mining expeditions and defending against hostile creatures in dangerous territories. Their presence offered emotional comfort despite the overwhelming nature of current circumstances. Steve crafted a boat from his remaining wooden supplies, knowing that water travel might provide the fastest escape route from the Hulk's expanding zone of destruction. Rivers and oceans followed predictable courses that would carry him far from the devastation, while requiring minimal resource expenditure for sustained movement. The peaceful waterway that had once served recreational purposes now represented salvation from an unprecedented threat. Steve had built docks and harbors along this route during more optimistic times, when the primary concern involved efficient transportation of bulk resources between distant construction projects. Those facilities lay in ruins now, but the water itself remained navigable. As Steve prepared to launch his makeshift vessel, the Hulk emerged from his underground excavation covered in stone dust and trailing fragments of destroyed infrastructure. The Green Giant's eyes swept across the landscape with predatory intensity, searching for new targets worthy of his destructive attention. His gaze settled on the fleeing miner with unmistakable recognition. The pursuit began immediately as the Hulk leaped across the terrain with bounds impossible that covered distances. Each landing created crater impacts that sent shockwaves through the ground, causing trees to sway and animals to flee in geometric panic. His trajectory aimed directly towards Steve's position with accuracy that suggested intelligence beneath the bestial fury. Steve pushed his boat into the water with desperate haste, jumping aboard just as the vessel caught the current that would carry him downstream. The familiar mechanics of water travel provided some comfort as his craft responded predictably to directional inputs, despite the chaos erupting around him. The Hulk reached the shoreline moments later, his massive form towering above the geometric landscape like an organic mountain that had suddenly achieved mobility. For a brief instant, Steve hoped that water might prove an insurmountable barrier for someone who operated according to different physical laws than those governing his cubic reality. That hope shattered as the Green Giant simply leaped across the river in a single bound, landing on the opposite shore with an impact that sent water blocks flying in all directions. The splash created temporary waterfalls as the liquid struggled to return to its programmed flow patterns while dealing with displacement forces that exceeded normal environmental parameters. Steve's boat was caught in the turbulence created by the Hulk's landing, spinning wildly as conflicting currents battled for control of the waterway. The miner gripped his craft's edges to maintain balance desperately, fighting while the river system attempted to process the unprecedented disruption to its algorithmic behavior. The chase continued along the riverbank as Steve's boat carried him downstream while the Hulk pursued on foot, his massive strides easily matching the current's speed. Each footstep created new geological features, as the Green Giant's weight compressed soil blocks beyond their normal density tolerances, leaving permanent impressions that would alter drainage patterns for generations to come. Other creatures inhabiting the river ecosystem fled in terror as this unprecedented pursuit unfolded above their aquatic domain. Fish scattered in perfect geometric formations while underwater vegetation swayed, according to currents that no longer followed predictable patterns. Even the normally placid squid retreated to deeper waters where they might avoid whatever cosmic forces were reshaping their environment. Steve spotted a massive waterfall ahead, where the river cascaded over a cliff face into a deep pool hundreds of blocks below. Under normal circumstances, such a drop would prove fatal to any entity lacking specific protective equipment or abilities, but the Hulk had already demonstrated immunity to conventional physics, making water damage calculations potentially irrelevant. The decision to risk the waterfall required split-second timing as Steve's boat approached the precipice. He could attempt to beach the vessel and flee on foot, though such action would inevitably lead to direct confrontation with a pursuer who had already proven capable of devastating injury through minimal physical contact. Alternatively, he could trust in his world's fall damage mechanics and hope that water landing protocols would provide sufficient protection during the descent. The pool below appeared deep enough to absorb impact forces according to established safety parameters, though those calculations had never been tested under circumstances involving interdimensional entities with gamma radiation exposure. Steve chose courage over caution, steering his boat directly toward the waterfall's edge while the Hulk's roars echoed across the landscape behind him. The moment of weightlessness as his craft left solid ground felt like flying, though he knew that gravity would soon reassert its mathematical authority over his trajectory. The descent through rushing water provided a brief respite from immediate danger, as the Hulk's pursuing form disappeared behind the cascade's curtain. Steve used these precious seconds to prepare for whatever challenges awaited in the pool below, knowing that his geometric adversary would likely find some method to continue the pursuit despite temporary obstacles. His boat struck the water's surface with tremendous force, the impact absorbed by liquid blocks that responded according to their programmed behavior patterns. Steve's health decreased slightly from fall damage, but remained well within survivable ranges thanks to the protective cushioning effect of deep water landing mechanics. The peaceful pool that had served as a scenic landmark during previous explorations now offered temporary sanctuary from the chaos erupting across his homeland. Lily pads floated serenely on the surface, while fish moved in their characteristic patterns, apparently unaware that their geometric paradise faced existential threats from forces beyond their simple programming. Above the waterfall, the Hulk's massive silhouette appeared at the cliff's edge, his green form outlined against the cubic sky like a monument to destruction incarnate. For a moment, Steve wondered whether even this gamma-enhanced giant might hesitate before such a tremendous drop, potentially buying precious time for escape or strategic planning. That hope proved short-lived, as the Hulk simply stepped off the cliff without apparent concern for the consequences. His descent through the waterfall created a secondary cascade as his massive body displaced enormous volumes of water during the fall. The impact when he struck the pool's surface sent tidal waves across the previously tranquil basin. Steve's boat was lifted and thrown by the resulting tsunami, carried far from his intended position as the water system struggled to process forces that exceeded its normal operational parameters. The miner found himself deposited on a distant shore, soaked and disoriented, but miraculously still alive despite proximity to impacts that should have proven instantly fatal. The Hulk emerged from the depths like a green leviathan, water streaming from his massive frame as he oriented himself toward his quarry's new position. His brief submersion had done nothing to diminish his rage or reduce his apparent invulnerability to environmental hazards that would challenge any normal entity. Steve realized that conventional escape tactics would prove inadequate against a pursuer who could traverse any terrain with such casual ease. Water barriers, cliff faces, even the fundamental geography of his world offered no protection against someone who operated according to rules that superseded local physics entirely. The chase resumed across new terrain as Steve fled deeper into wilderness areas he had never fully explored. These regions contained biomes and structures generated according to algorithms he didn't completely understand, offering possibilities for refuge or resources that might not exist in his familiar homeland. Ancient ruins appeared on the horizon, mysterious structures that predated his arrival in this world and operated according to construction principles that differed from his own building techniques. Perhaps these archaeological sites might contain knowledge or capabilities that could address threats beyond normal gameplay parameters. The Hulk's destructive rampage had awakened something that Steve was only beginning to comprehend. This wasn't simply a powerful monster that could be defeated through superior equipment or tactical planning. This was a fundamental challenge to the ordered nature of existence itself, a force that questioned whether mathematical precision could coexist with chaotic possibility. As the pursuit continued toward whatever revelations awaited in the unexplored wilderness, Steve carried with him the growing realization that his world would never be the same regardless of how this encounter ultimately resolved. The very concepts of safety, predictability, and controlled progress had been shattered by the arrival of something that recognized no boundaries except its own limitless capacity for destruction. The ancient temple complex rose from the wilderness like a geometric fever dream, its weathered stone blocks arranged in patterns that defied Steve's understanding of conventional architecture. Massive pillars supported structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their surfaces covered in symbols that hurt his cubic eyes to examine directly. This was no ordinary dungeon or generated structure, but something that predated the normal rules governing his reality. Steve's boat ground against the sandy shoreline as he desperately sought refuge within these mysterious ruins. Behind him, the Hulk's thunderous footsteps grew closer with each passing moment, each impact sending tremors through the ground that caused ancient blocks to shift ominously in their millennia-old positions. The Green Giant's roars echoed across the landscape like the death cries of order itself. The temple's entrance yawned before Steve like the mouth of some cosmic entity, its interior shrouded in shadows that seemed to absorb light rather than merely lacking illumination. Torches placed by long-forgotten builders flickered with flames that burned colors not found in his world's normal spectrum, casting dancing patterns that made stable geometry appear to writhe and flow. Steve plunged into this architectural nightmare, his diamond boots clicking against stone floors that felt somehow unstable despite their obvious solidity. The corridor stretched ahead in directions that mathematics couldn't properly describe, with doorways that led to rooms existing in impossible spatial relationships to one another. This place operated according to principles that made his ordered reality seem quaint by comparison. The sound of massive fists pounding against the temple's outer walls reverberated through the structure like thunder trapped in a stone bottle. The Hulk had reached the ancient complex and was attempting to tear his way inside with characteristic directness. Each blow sent cracked spider webbing across surfaces that had withstood countless centuries of weathering and decay. Steve pressed deeper into the labyrinthine interior, following passages that seemed to rearrange themselves when he wasn't looking directly at them. The builders of this place had understood something about the nature of reality that transcended his simple block-based comprehension. These weren't mere rooms and corridors, but expressions of concepts that existed beyond three-dimensional space. Strange artifacts lined the walls, objects that resembled nothing in Steve's extensive catalog of craftable items and discoverable treasures. Crystals that pulsed with internal light cast shadows that moved independently of their sources. Metallic constructs hummed with energies that made his skin tingle despite his protective diamond armor. Books written in languages that shifted and changed as he attempted to read them. A tremendous crash echoed through the temple as the Hulk finally breached the entrance, his massive form forcing itself through doorways never designed to accommodate such impossible proportions. The ancient stones groaned under stresses they had never been intended to bear, their structural integrity compromised by forces that existed outside normal engineering parameters. Steve discovered a chamber filled with what appeared to be command blocks, those mysterious elements that existed beyond normal gameplay mechanics and could alter reality itself through properly constructed commands. But these weren't the simple administrative tools he had occasionally encountered in creative explorations. These blocks pulsed with power that seemed almost alive, their surfaces crawling with symbols that rearranged themselves in response to his presence. The sound of systematic destruction grew closer as the Hulk carved his way through the temple's interior with methodical fury. Ancient walls that had stood since world generation collapsed under his assault, their carefully arranged blocks scattering like geometric snowflakes before dissolving into whatever dimensional space claimed all destroyed materials. The Green Giant's rampage was erasing millennia of architectural achievement with casual indifference. Steve approached the nearest command block with desperate hope, his trembling fingers hovering over its glowing surface. These devices could theoretically manipulate the fundamental laws governing his reality, potentially creating barriers or effects that might contain even something as powerful as his gamma-enhanced pursuer. But activating such ancient technology carried risks he couldn't begin to calculate. The chamber shook as the Hulk's destructive progress brought him ever closer to Steve's position. Dust rained from the ceiling as support structures failed under unprecedented stress. The geometric miner realized he had perhaps moments before his temporary sanctuary would be reduced to scattered rubble like everything else that had stood in the Green Giant's path. With no alternatives remaining, Steve placed his hands against the command block's surface and felt immediately overwhelmed by the rush of power that flowed through his cubic consciousness. This wasn't merely a tool for administrative convenience, but a direct interface with the underlying code that governed existence itself. Through this connection, he could perceive the mathematical foundation beneath everything he had always taken for granted. The world revealed itself as layers upon layers of algorithmic complexity, with his familiar block-based reality serving as merely the most visible surface of an infinitely deep computational structure. Beneath the simple placement and destruction mechanics, he understood lay systems of staggering sophistication that maintained causality, physics, and the illusion of coherent experience across unlimited dimensional space. Most shocking of all, Steve could perceive the Hulk's presence as a fundamental error in this cosmic program, a variable that operated according to external parameters that the system couldn't properly process or contain. The Green Giant existed as a glitch in reality itself, a force that introduced chaos into carefully maintained order through sheer incompatibility with local operational frameworks. Understanding flooded through Steve's consciousness as he grasped the true nature of his situation. This wasn't simply a matter of facing a powerful enemy who could be defeated through superior tactics or equipment. The Hulk represented an existential threat to the mathematical foundation of everything Steve had ever known, a walking contradiction that could unravel the very fabric of his cubic universe. But with understanding came possibility. If the command blocks could interface directly with the system governing reality, perhaps they could be used to impose new rules that would contain or redirect the chaotic force that threatened everything. Steve began inputting commands with desperate precision, his fingers dancing across surfaces that responded to thoughts as much as physical contact. The first command attempted to create an impenetrable barrier around the chamber, walls constructed from bedrock that should theoretically prove immune to even the Hulk's incredible strength. The blocks materialized instantly, their gray-speckled surfaces forming a protective shell that enclosed Steve within supposedly absolute security. The illusion of safety lasted exactly 3 seconds before massive green fists began pounding against the bedrock walls with force that made the entire structure ring like a struck bell. Cracks appeared in surfaces that should have been indestructible, spiderwebbing outward from impact points that glowed with residual gamma energy. Even the fundamental building blocks of reality proved inadequate against this unprecedented assault. Steve's second command attempted to teleport the Hulk away from his position, using transportation mechanics to relocate the threat to distant coordinates, where his destructive rampage might continue without endangering the command block interface. The spell activated successfully, reality warping around the green giant's massive form as dimensional energies prepared to carry him across vast distances. For a moment, the pounding against the bedrock walls ceased, suggesting that the teleportation had achieved its intended effect. Steve allowed himself a brief surge of hope that ancient technology might succeed where conventional solutions had failed. Perhaps the builders of this temple had possessed knowledge that could address threats beyond normal gameplay parameters. That hope shattered as the Hulk materialized inside the supposedly secure chamber, his massive form occupying the same space where Steve had been standing moments before. The teleportation command had failed to account for the green giant's apparent immunity to force displacement, allowing him to resist or redirect the transportation effect according to his own incomprehensible abilities. Steve found himself pressed against the chamber wall, staring up at green eyes that burned with rage beyond human comprehension. This close, he could perceive the gamma radiation that coursed through the Hulk's massive frame like liquid fire, energy patterns that existed outside his world's normal spectrum of detectable phenomena. The creature's very presence warped local spacetime in ways that made Steve's geometric vision blur and distort. The Hulk raised one massive fist, preparing to deliver a blow that would undoubtedly reduce Steve's cubic form to scattered component pixels. But before the strike could land, something extraordinary occurred. The command blocks throughout the chamber began resonating with harmonic frequencies that caused the air itself to shimmer with barely visible energy patterns. Ancient safeguards built into the temple's deepest systems had finally activated in response to the unprecedented threat. The builders of this place had apparently anticipated the possibility of reality warping entities breaching their defenses and had prepared contingencies that operated on levels of complexity Steve could barely comprehend. Reality itself began to solidify around the Hulk's position, space-time crystallizing into geometric patterns that locked his massive form in place like amber preserving an ancient insect. The green giant's struggles against this constraint sent shockwaves through the fundamental structure of existence, but the crystallized reality held firm against even his incredible strength. Steve watched in amazement as additional command blocks emerged from hidden alcoves throughout the chamber, their surfaces blazing with power as they worked in concert to maintain the reality lock that contained his pursuer. The ancient builders had constructed not just a temple, but a prison designed to hold entities that operated beyond normal physical parameters. The Hulk's roars of fury took on a different quality as he realized his situation, rage mixing with something that might have been confusion or even fear. For the first time since his arrival in this cubic reality, the green giant found himself truly constrained by forces he couldn't simply smash through with brute strength. Time around his position proved. The crystallized space more resilient than any material he had previously encountered. But Steve could perceive through his connection to the command block network that this containment was temporary at best. The energy required to maintain a reality lock around something as fundamentally incompatible as the Hulk was enormous, draining power from systems that had been designed to operate for millennia without external maintenance. The ancient builders had created an emergency measure, not a permanent solution. Warning indicators began flashing across the command block interfaces as system strain approached critical thresholds. The temple's power grid, sustained by mechanisms that Steve couldn't begin to understand, was being pushed beyond its operational limits by the effort required to contain a walking violation of natural law. Failure was inevitable, though the precise timing remained uncertain. Steve had perhaps minutes before the reality lock would collapse and release the Hulk from his crystalline prison. During that brief window, he needed to discover some method of addressing this threat permanently, or at least finding a way to remove it from his reality entirely. The command blocks offered unprecedented access to the underlying systems governing his world, but using them effectively required knowledge he simply didn't possess. Desperate inspiration struck as Steve realized he might not need to understand the complex systems he was interfacing with if he could somehow communicate his intentions clearly enough for the ancient AI to interpret and implement. The builders of this temple had clearly possessed wisdom that transcended his simple block-based comprehension, but their safeguards were designed to protect the same reality he called home. Steve began inputting a new type of command, not attempting to directly manipulate reality, but instead describing his desired outcome in terms the ancient systems might recognize and execute. He wanted the Hulk removed from his world, returned to whatever dimension he had originated from, sent back to a place where his chaotic nature wouldn't threaten the ordered existence of geometric beings. The command blocks pulsed with increasing intensity as they processed this request, their crystalline surfaces displaying cascades of symbols that shifted and flowed like liquid mathematics. Steve could sense vast computational resources being dedicated to analyzing his request and determining whether it lay within the system's operational capabilities. Meanwhile, hairline cracks had begun appearing in the crystallized space-time surrounding the Hulk's position. The reality lock was deteriorating under constant pressure from the green giant's struggles, each movement sending stress fractures through the geometric prison that contained him. The containment field's collapse appeared imminent despite the enormous energies being channeled to maintain it. A new harmonic tone began emanating from the command blocks as they reached consensus regarding Steve's request. This sound carried undertones that seemed to resonate through dimensions Steve couldn't perceive, suggesting that the ancient systems were reaching beyond his familiar cubic reality to access capabilities he had never imagined possible. The air in the chamber began to shimmer with portal energies as dimensional barriers weakened in response to commands being executed at levels of reality Steve couldn't directly observe. Through his connection to the command block network, he could sense vast forces being marshaled to create a gateway that would bridge the gap between incompatible realities. The Hulk seemed to sense the changing nature of his containment as the crystallized space-time around him began taking on new properties. His struggles intensified as gamma-enhanced instincts warned him of impending displacement, but the reality lock held firm despite increasing strain on the ancient systems maintaining it. A rift in space-time opened directly beside the Hulk's position, its edges crackling with energies that made Steve's geometric vision water despite his protective diamond armor. Through this dimensional gateway, he could glimpse another reality entirely, a place where organic curves dominated over mathematical precision and where the laws of physics operated according to principles that hurt his ordered mind to contemplate. The Hulk's home dimension beckoned through the portal like a wound in the fabric of Steve's reality, promising return to a place where his chaotic nature would find familiar chaos to match. But the green giant's resistance to the dimensional pull suggested that simple proximity to an exit wouldn't be sufficient to ensure his departure. Additional measures would be required to complete the transportation process. Steve input commands directing the ancient systems to extend the reality lock's effect, using the crystallized space-time not just to contain the Hulk, but to gradually move him toward the dimensional gateway that would carry him home. The process required delicate manipulation of forces beyond his comprehension, but the temple's AI seemed capable of executing such complex operations. Slowly, inexorably, the Hulk's massive form began sliding through the crystallized reality toward the portal's edge. His struggles against this forced movement sent shock waves through the chamber that caused ancient stones to crack and crumble, but the reality lock maintained its integrity despite the tremendous stresses being applied to its structure. The dimensional gateway pulsed with increasing energy as the Hulk approached its threshold, preparing to receive a passenger whose very existence challenged the ordered nature of Steve's reality. Once the green giant crossed that boundary, the portal could be sealed behind him, ending the threat to the cubic world's mathematical foundation. But victory remained uncertain as warning indicators throughout the command block network blazed with increasing urgency, signaling that system failures were cascading through the ancient temple's power grid. The energy requirements for maintaining both the reality lock and the dimensional portal were exceeding the builder's most optimistic operational desperation as the Hulk slowly parameters. Steve watched in growing approach salvation, while the very systems enabling that salvation began collapsing under impossible demands. Success and failure balanced on a knife's edge as ancient technology strained to accomplish something its creators had never anticipated would be necessary. The chamber filled with the sound of reality itself groaning under stress as two incompatible sets of physical laws struggled for dominance within the same spatial coordinates. Steve's cubic world and the Hulk's organic dimension were attempting to occupy the same mathematical space, creating paradoxes that threatened to tear holes in the fabric of existence itself. Time was running out as system failures spread through the temple's deepest infrastructure, like a virus consuming the very foundations of ordered reality. Steve could only hope that the ancient builders had possessed the wisdom to create safeguards robust enough to handle even this unprecedented crisis, or that their AI would prove capable of finding solutions that transcended the limitations of its original programming. The fate of his entire geometric universe hung in the balance as the impossible collision between order and chaos approached its critical resolution point. The Hulk's massive green foot crossed the dimensional threshold, just as the first command block exploded in a shower of crystalline fragments that rained down like geometric snow. The ancient system shrieked with electronic death cries as circuits that had operated flawlessly for millennia finally succumbed to demands beyond their design parameters. Steve watched in horrified fascination as reality itself began unraveling around the edges of the portal. The dimensional gateway flickered like a dying flame, its edges wavering between existence and void as the power grid supporting it collapsed in cascading failure. Through the unstable portal, Steve caught glimpses of the Hulk's home dimension, a place where skyscrapers reached toward cloudy skies and automobiles moved along paved streets that curved naturally rather than following mathematical grid patterns. Half of the green giant's body had already passed through the threshold when the reality lock finally shattered completely. Crystallized space-time exploded outward in fragments that cut through the temple's ancient stones like cosmic shrapnel. The Hulk found himself suspended between dimensions, his massive form stretched across the boundary between two incompatible realities. Steve felt the command block network's connection severing as more crystalline cores overloaded and died. The temple's AI, faced with computational demands that exceeded every safety parameter built into its architecture, began executing emergency protocols that prioritized preservation of local reality over successful completion of the dimensional transfer process. The Hulk roared with pain and confusion as forces beyond his comprehension tore at his molecular structure. Being caught between dimensions subjected his gamma-enhanced physiology to stresses that even his incredible durability struggled to withstand. His struggles to escape the dimensional trap only intensified the reality distortions spreading through the temple complex. Ancient stones began aging decades and seconds as temporal fields fluctuated wildly around the destabilizing portal. Some blocks crumbled to dust, while others reverted to their original quarried state, their careful craftsmanship dissolving back into raw materials. The very concept of permanence seemed to be breaking down as the boundaries between past and present blurred. Steve backed away from the chaos, his geometric form flickering as dimensional energies washed over him in unpredictable waves. For terrifying moments, he could perceive himself existing simultaneously in multiple states, as if the quantum uncertainty governing his cubic reality was being forced to acknowledge possibilities that shouldn't exist within its programming. The remaining command blocks began implementing what appeared to be a desperate final protocol. Instead of attempting to maintain the failing dimensional transfer, They started channeling all remaining power into reinforcing the barriers between realities. Their surfaces blazed with light so intense that Steve had to shield his cubic eyes from the radiance. The dimensional portal began contracting around the Hulk's partially transferred form like a cosmic sphincter, attempting to prevent contamination between incompses. The Green Giant's audible, univer-anguished roars took on harmonics that existed in both dimensions simultaneously, creating sound patterns that made Steve's geometric ears bleed despite their digital nature. Reality reasserted itself with a thunderclap that shattered every remaining window in the temple complex. The portal collapsed in on itself, taking the Hulk's upper torso with it while leaving his massive legs standing motionless in Steve's dimension like green pillars supporting nothing. The dimensional gateway sealed with a sound like the universe sighing in relief. For several heartbeats, absolute silence filled the ruined chamber. Steve stared at the Hulk's severed legs, expecting them to topple over or dissolve according to normal physics governing detached body parts. Instead, they remained upright and solid, their surfaces continuing to radiate the gamma energy that had made their owner so dangerous. Then the legs began moving. Without guidance from the Hulk's consciousness, the severed limbs started walking with mechanical precision toward the nearest wall. Their footsteps left the same crater-like impressions that had marked the Green Giant's passage, suggesting that whatever force had animated the complete form still operated within these isolated appendages. Steve watched in growing horror as the legs began systematically kicking at the temple walls with the same destructive fury their owner had displayed. Each impact sent tremors through the ancient structure while blocks scattered like startled birds. The severed limbs were continuing the rampage autonomously, driven by residual gamma radiation that recognized no need for conscious direction. The geometric miner realized that his desperate solution had only transformed the problem rather than solving it. Instead of facing one incredibly powerful entity with at least rudimentary intelligence, he now confronted autonomous body parts that possessed all the destructive capability of the original, while lacking any possibility of reason or negotiation. The legs kicked through the chamber wall and began their mechanical march toward the temple's exit. Their path of destruction carved a straight line through architectural marvels that had survived countless centuries, reducing priceless artifacts to scattered debris with each thunderous step. Nothing in their path seemed capable of slowing or deterring their relentless advance. Steve followed at a safe distance, his mind reeling from the implications of what he had witnessed. The command blocks had succeeded in removing most of the Hulk from his reality, but the portions that remained carried enough destructive potential to threaten everything he held dear. These animated legs might lack the complete entity's tactical intelligence, but their mechanical persistence made them equally dangerous. The severed limbs emerged from the temple into the fading daylight, their green surfaces gleaming with residual dimensional energy that made the air shimmer around them. They paused momentarily, as if sensing their new environment, then began walking with purposeful determination toward the distant mountains where Steve had originally witnessed the cosmic impact. Each step carried them across terrain with impossible efficiency, their stride length adapted to cover maximum distance while maintaining the destructive force that had characterized their owner's rampage. Trees fell before their advance like wheat before a harvester. Stone formations crumbled under impacts that registered on Steve's geological sensors from kilometers away. The geometric miner found himself facing a new type of crisis that his world's mechanics had never been designed to address. How could he stop something that possessed no head to target, no consciousness to reason with, no vital organs that might prove vulnerable to conventional weapons? These legs represented pure destructive force, stripped of everything that might have made negotiation possible. Steve's diamond sword had proven useless against the complete Hulk's invulnerable hide. His enchanted armor offered no protection against casual swipes that could launch him across landscapes. Even the ancient temple's reality warping technology had only succeeded in creating a more focused version of the original threat. The legs' mechanical march continued toward populated areas where villagers pursued their simple, daily routines in blissful ignorance of the approaching catastrophe. Steve could imagine the devastation that would result when these autonomous appendages reached civilized zones. Every carefully constructed building would fall. Every painstakingly cultivated farm would be trampled. Every geometric life would face extinction from forces they couldn't possibly comprehend. Desperation drove Steve toward increasingly creative solutions, as conventional approaches proved inadequate. Perhaps the leg's mechanical nature could be exploited through environmental hazards that affected movement rather than attempting direct damage. Lava flows might prove capable of slowing their advance, even if they couldn't cause permanent harm. Steve watched the Hulk's severed legs disappear into the distant horizon, their mechanical march promising endless destruction across his cubic world. The ancient temple lay in ruins around him, its command blocks shattered and lifeless. He had saved his reality from complete annihilation, but at a cost that would echo through every geometric landscape for generations to come. Sometimes the greatest victories carry the heaviest prices, and in a universe where order meets chaos, perfect solutions remain forever beyond reach. The question isn't whether we can defeat the forces that threaten us, but whether we can live with the consequences of our desperate choices.